Who is the absolutely most disturbing person you've ever met? The creepy brother. Back when I was in college, I shared a place with two other girls. We were not very close friends, but we all grew up in the same town, so we knew each other well enough to live together. One of my roommates had a younger brother, and one day she asked if he could stay on our couch for a night or two. I was not thrilled about it, but I agreed and kept my mouth shut. From the moment he walked in, something about him made my skin crawl. His eyes looked empty, almost lifeless, and he hardly said a word to anyone. I felt relieved when he finally left. Years later, I learned just how disturbed that boy really was. His parents had thrown him out because he had been stealing from them. Instead of leaving for good, he secretly set up a spot to live inside their garage. He would clean it out during the day so no one noticed, and they never realized how long he had been hiding there. Things only got worse. He broke into the neighbor's house. A normal burglary would have been awful enough, but that is not what happened. He waited there for hours until the woman who lived there came home. When she walked through the door, he killed her with an axe. The police caught him soon after, driving around in her car. A few years later, he was put to death for what he did. The truth is, none of this shocked me. He was the most evil person I have ever been near, and deep down, I had felt something was wrong with him long before the murder. The sergeant. When I was in the army, my very first line supervisor was a nightmare. He made my life miserable, and I was not the only one. He went after other women in our unit too. He would constantly try to pressure female soldiers into sexual favors, and it was disgusting. The man was a manipulator, a smooth liar, and somehow he was still liked by most of the men around us. Our unit was mostly male, and they seemed to look the other way. Just being around him made my skin crawl. A few years later, I heard he had gone on to become a Green Beret. Then, in the year 2013, the truth finally caught up with him. He was put on trial and convicted of kidnapping, sexual assault, and forcible sodomy. The punishment was a dishonorable discharge from the military and a 10-year prison sentence. But it did not last. A petition went around asking for a lighter sentence. A general stepped in, dropped the kidnapping charge, and that man walked free after serving only a single year. To this day, I still feel the same way about him as I did back then. He ruined people's lives and got away with it. The boy in the blazer. I once worked in the law courts, and I saw more than my share of ugly cases. Some days I had to sit through grim inquests, and one time I listened to a drug addict's case where he had shaken his ex-girlfriend's baby so violently the child's brain was destroyed and it died. But out of everything I saw, there is one boy I still remember the most. Every Monday was children's court. Most of the cases involved teenagers who had stolen something, broken into a place, or done some vandalism. A lot of them came from poor homes, kids who were neglected or had no real guidance. Then one morning, in walked a boy who looked like he had come from a completely different world. He wore a private school uniform, polished shoes, a blazer, and a tie. His parents stood beside him, dressed to perfection. The school badge on his jacket was from one of those elite schools where the fees are sky high. He looked about 16, blonde hair, glasses, a soft baby face. Among the other teens in their tracksuits and messy clothes, he looked like he did not belong there at all. I was in the courtroom when his case was called. The other kids that morning had been caught for things like shoplifting or spray painting walls. But this boy, the one who looked so quiet and harmless, had done something much darker. At a school camp, he had tried to force himself on not just one, but two different girls. He waited until everyone was asleep. When the first girl stepped out of her room to go down the hall to the bathroom, he grabbed her and pulled her into a cupboard. He tried to assault her, but she fought her way free and ran to wake up a teacher. That teacher, when he came back, found the boy with his hands around the neck of a second girl. The man at the till. When I worked as a cashier at a supermarket, there was one regular customer who gave me the creeps more than anyone else. He looked exactly like the kind of man you would picture if someone said the word pervert. People always say most predators blend in and look like ordinary folks, but not this guy. Everything about him screamed trouble. He always made sure to come through my line. Every time, he would lean in and tell me I was pretty, or ask if I had a boyfriend. Then he would make sleazy little comments like, "If I were your boyfriend, I would," and trail off in a way that made my skin crawl. After paying, he would not just leave like a normal customer. He would stand right there at the end of my till and just stare at me. Sometimes, he even stood outside the big glass windows at the front of the store, watching me while I worked. To make it even more unsettling, I was 19 years old back then, but most people thought I looked a lot younger than that. I reported him to management, but they brushed it off. They said there was nothing they could do, since it was only my word against his. But then he made the mistake of following one of the female managers around the store. After that, they finally banned him. The scariest part came later. One evening he was outside again, staring at me, and another cashier recognized him. She said he lived on her street. That is when I found out he had just been released from prison, where he had served time for raping his own daughter. The soda and the killer. When I was 19, I got kicked out and spent about a year sleeping on couches wherever I could. One of the places I ended up was a rundown trailer that was barely livable. It belonged to someone I only halfway knew, and the place seemed to draw in some of the worst people in town. I had nowhere else to go, so I stayed there for a while. I kept a 2-liter bottle of soda in the back of the refrigerator. I even wrote my name on it with a note that said, "Please do not touch." It sounds silly, but it meant something to me. Having that one bottle was like a small comfort, something that was just mine. I would sip on it when I needed to escape the stress of everything going on. I did not mind sharing with the people I lived with, but the guy who ran the trailer always had random strangers coming through, and I did not want them drinking from it, especially not straight out of the bottle. One morning, I opened the refrigerator and saw that the bottle was nearly empty. What had been almost full the night before was now down to just half a cup. Feeling disappointed, I asked, "Hey, who drank my soda?" Everyone pointed to a guy I will call KT. KT was strange, about my age or maybe a little younger. He already had a bad reputation around town for stealing, using drugs, and all sorts of shady behavior. I did not confront him because he honestly made me uneasy. I figured it was not worth the trouble to fight over a soda. A few weeks later, something happened that still haunts me. KT's best friend, who I will call C, went missing during the county fair. C was a good kid. He was friends with my brother, and liked by just about everyone who knew him. Then word spread that KT had been going around bragging that C was dead, and that he was the one who did it. As horrifying as it sounded, it turned out to be true. KT killed his own best friend over drugs and about $300. They found C's body out in the woods, chopped up and burned. The thought that I had been around KT just weeks before he murdered his closest friend still keeps me awake some nights. Our whole town still misses C, and since then there has been more violence than ever. The only good part is that KT and 3 others who helped him are now locked away for life. My ex-husband. My ex-husband had the mindset of a man who hated women, including me. To him, women only existed to serve his wants. He constantly made comments about women's bodies, picking them apart, as if no woman could ever measure up. No matter what he had, it was never enough. I kept trying to make things work, but he pushed me into sexual acts that I was not comfortable with, and then he got angry that I did not enjoy them. He told me over and over that I owed him, but it was never the other way around. What I wanted was a true partner, someone to build a good life with, something better than the poverty he grew up in. With me, he finally had a middle-class life, but that was not enough for him. He wanted power, control, and ownership. The final breaking point came when he told me that since I could not meet his needs, I should let him sleep with other women and then come home to me afterward. I was disgusted. He even called himself a Christian while asking me to bless him committing adultery. He wore me down with endless asking. If I refused, he would stop speaking to me. Sometimes he would pour margaritas, wait until I was tipsy and agreeable, and then press me again. One night I broke. I said, "Fine, go ahead," just to get him off my back. He wanted me to say, "Go ahead and have fun." So I did, but I added that I did not want to know anything about it, and warned him it would not end the way he thought. Not long after, I found out he was running online ads looking for random women to sleep with for free. In those ads he mocked me. He told strangers his wife could not satisfy him, compared me to a blow-up doll, and made fun of me in the cruelest way possible. That was the moment I knew I was done. When I left him, he first tried to win me back with sweet words. He said the ads had not worked, so technically he had not cheated. Suddenly I was everything to him, and he promised to change. He even mailed my parents a letter apologizing, but in the same breath he claimed I had led him away from God. When I did not return, he turned nasty. In a text, he told me he had proof I had agreed to his cheating. Then he sent me a recording of the night I had broken down, and told him to go ahead. He used that as his weapon, saying I had no right to leave since I had agreed. That was when I realized how disturbed he truly was. The divorce was brutal. He dragged it out and fought me every step of the way. The court even forced me into counseling sessions with him. And when he finally accepted it was over, he tried to humiliate me. He printed private conversations between us from Facebook Messenger, conversations where we had joked about sex, and mailed them to my parents. That was 10 years ago. He is still single. He now lives with his sister and her husband. 2 years back, he even made the local news after drunkenly threatening to kill government officials on Facebook. The FBI searched his house, took away his guns, and he ended up pleading guilty to a lesser charge of harassment to avoid being hit with a felony terrorism threat. He had to give a DNA sample and he is now banned from owning firearms, which is fitting since he was obsessed with guns. As for me, life turned out better. I have been with a wonderful man for the past 5 years. He is not just my partner but also my best friend. He treats me with real respect and makes me happy every single day. We have a solid middle-class life together, and we hope to start a family someday. He is the best thing that has ever happened to me. The screenwriting class. I once signed up for a screenwriting course, and during our very first session, the room was full but completely quiet. Nobody was saying a word. Since I can be a little outgoing, I broke the silence with a light-hearted introduction game. People warmed up, joined in, and the energy in the room felt better almost instantly. But there was one guy who stood out, and not in a good way. From the start, something about him just felt wrong. You know that gut feeling when someone makes the air feel heavy? That was him. There was also another student in the group, a man who was clearly autistic. He was actually very nice and open about his social struggles, which he shared as the weeks went on. Before one session, I overheard the strange guy cornering him and talking nonstop about hard drugs. He bragged that he had tried everything, claimed he had ties to violent gangs in America, and seemed proud of it. Whenever it was his turn to contribute ideas in class, he always took the darkest path possible. He went on and on about body horror, the more twisted and revolting the better. He would bring up how violent gang members operate, insisting that he knew their methods intimately. It was clear that his imagination was fueled by sick, disturbing ideas. By the 7th class, he completely lost control. Out of nowhere, he erupted at the teacher. He shouted, insulted her, and started threatening her in front of everyone. A few of us tried to calm him down, but he was furious and stormed out of the building. The organizers banned him immediately, and even gave him all his money back, which was unheard of. They never did that for anyone. The fact that they did it for him told me everything. He felt like a real threat. I walked away convinced he was unstable and dangerous. The liar soldier. I once dated a man who made himself out to be a war hero. He told me endless stories about his time in Afghanistan, traumatizing missions, night terrors, and memories that haunted him. He even told these stories to real veterans who had actually been there. Later, I found out the truth from his ex-wife. He had never set foot in Afghanistan. The only place he was ever stationed was Japan. Everything he told me was a lie. And that was only the beginning. Looking back, I know he was emotionally abusive, maybe even a narcissist. He had cheated on his wife with me, though I did not know that at the time. He told me she was a crazy lesbian. That turned out to be another lie. She was a kind, genuine woman. He used to brag about supposedly sleeping with 2 lesbians, as if that made him special. He lied about everything. Once, he told me he knew the man who had assaulted me and promised he would beat him up. None of it was true. He also offered to fold the American flag at a funeral, saying he had done it countless times for fallen soldiers. My mother, who comes from a military family and knows how it is properly done, had to fix his mistake because he folded it completely wrong. His obsessions were just as disturbing. He made a big deal about wanting virgins. After filling my head with promises of love and a future together, he ghosted me. When I finally went to his place to get answers, I saw another woman right there with him. I slapped him across the face and walked away. He also had this sick way of twisting things into jokes. One story he told me was about a fellow soldier getting blown apart. He claimed he picked up the man's severed hand and carried it to another soldier, asking, "Do you need a hand?" As much as I normally love a dark joke, it chilled me because he lied about it so casually. Another time he talked about blasting the song Pet by a perfect circle while his sergeant supposedly told him to shoot those men. That too was just part of his act. He made up war stories to sound important, when really it was nothing but lies. And if that was not enough, there was also the creep at my job who once approached me out of the blue, asking me to model for him and go on a road trip where he would pay for everything, for both of us. That moment still makes my skin crawl. The lab incident. Back when I was 19, I worked at my university as a student employee in one of the labs. My job was simple: wipe down the desks and keep the place clean. One day, while I was walking past the table of students, one guy turned to his friends and said out loud that he wanted to rape me. Then he guessed I was Filipino or Guatemalan, bragging he had never been with either before. I froze inside but kept cleaning. I didn't want to lose my job, and at only 5 feet tall, I didn't stand a chance against him or his friends if they decided to do something. On top of that, being at an art school and being brown, I knew that if I caused trouble by reporting them, it could get me blacklisted or labeled difficult. They carried on with their disgusting game, taking turns guessing my ethnicity and talking about how they'd like to hurt me. I stayed quiet, moved to another table where more students were sitting, and focused on wiping the desks. After a while, they lost interest and walked off. The whole thing was terrifying. What I remember most wasn't even the words, it was the look in their eyes and the way they laughed, like it was a joke to them. There was this dead kind of glee that made me sick. For context, it wasn't just the one guy. There were 5 of them in total, 3 men and 2 women, and they all joined in on it. That made it even worse. I was just a short 19-year-old guy surrounded by a group of people who thought it was fun to talk about assaulting me. At the time, I tried to laugh it off. I told myself it was funny because they never actually guessed my ethnicity correctly. But deep down I knew it wasn't funny. It was a horrible, threatening situation. Thankfully, I'm okay now, and I did graduate. But that day has stuck with me. High school horror. When I was in high school in a fairly small town, there was a girl in my class who everyone considered weird. I usually did not care about labels like that. Most of my friends were weirdos, too, but there was something about her that just gave me a strange, unsettling vibe. I felt a little guilty about judging her, but I never tried to get to know her because something felt off. A year later, my roommate, who I will call Dee, got a frantic phone call from her mom. Dee's mom told her to only accept rides from family members or me, and to avoid anyone else for a while. Dee asked why, and her mom explained that her friend's niece had just been murdered. It turned out that the weird girl from my class was involved. She was part of a group, 3 people in total, who had brutally killed a girl named Cynthia Hoffman. They tied her up, shot her, and dumped her body in a river along a popular trail. They had tried to make it look like Cynthia had simply gone missing, leaving her belongings at a park, but the police quickly figured out what happened. The motive was even more twisted. A man from another state had been grooming the girl from my class over Facebook, pretending to be a millionaire. In reality, he was just a loser. The girl had recorded and sent illegal content to him, and in return, he offered a large sum of money, several $1,000,000, to murder someone and send proof. When all of this came out, I no longer felt guilty for judging her as a strange person in class. I realized I had picked up on something fundamentally wrong with her from the start, even though I was too young back then to understand that my instincts were right. The peanut factory auditor. A while back, I was doing a supply-side audit at a peanut factory. I was new on the job and got paired with a brunette woman who seemed to be in her mid-30s. She had about 10 more years of experience than me. Right away, she came across as unfriendly and demanding. Not unusual for auditors, but she made it clear she wanted to finish the audit fast. She insisted we take separate cars to the site and said she wanted to be done by 3 o'clock, which seemed odd since it meant we could not be as thorough as we should. The factory itself was a mess, poorly run, and the employees were treated badly, which is common in that area. During my inspection, I spoke with a young woman about my age who broke down crying while telling me she had been sexually assaulted at work. I was new and unsure how to handle this, so I went to my partner for guidance. When I asked to speak with her about it, she shot me the nastiest look, like I had just offended her personally. I explained the situation, and she shrugged, annoyed, saying the crying was disturbing and that everyone could hear it. I suggested we take it up with management, and she snapped at me, asking, "Do you want to do more work?" I was shocked by her callousness. I insisted we investigate, and she said fine, but that I would have to do it alone. Later, during a debrief with the factory managers, I brought up the assault. The look she gave me still haunts me. It was pure anger, like she wanted to kill me. The managers said they knew about the employee, but since there were no cameras in that area and no witnesses, there wasn't much they could do. They ended up changing the shifts so the two employees worked separately in different parts of the building. Without proof, there was nothing else to do. When the audit ended, she checked her watch. It was 4 o'clock, and gave me one last icy glare before leaving. Even now, she remains one of the most callous people I have ever met. As a bonus, a friend of mine who worked with her said she often talks about cheating on her husband and admits she does not care about people in general. Honestly, I think she might be a sociopath. The delusional date. Years ago, I briefly dated a guy who was completely delusional. He told me he owned a magazine and had previously worked for GQ. He even made a fake website for this pretend magazine to make it seem real. At one point, he said he was going on a trip and asked me to come along. I agreed and took time off work, not knowing yet how unhinged he was. He sent me what looked like a boarding pass from his assistant. He didn't have an assistant. It was him pretending to be someone else. And then, of course, the trip never happened. He also lied about his height. He insisted he was 5 feet 9 inches tall, but I am 5 feet 4 inches and could clearly see he was just an inch taller than me. I thought it was weird he would blatantly lie about something so obvious. The final straw came one night when he came over to my place and ran out on an errand. I returned to find him in my bathroom, shaving his head. Blood was smeared all over the door and walls, and there were 2 empty wine bottles. I had been gone maybe an hour. I tried to get him to leave, but he assaulted me. I managed to get him out of the bathroom and lock myself inside while calling the police. 5 officers arrived. My bathroom was near the front door, so I listened for movement in the hallway, snuck out, and opened the door for them. One officer grabbed me, and the cops stormed in. I heard a struggle, then they took him away in handcuffs. My living room was a mess, and the couch was overturned. I was too shaken to press charges at the time. I just asked that they put him in the hospital. He was placed on a psychiatric hold. He had also told a bunch of other lies, like renting a fancy office downtown for his magazine, going to New York for a week when he never left town, and even stealing $300 from my coat pocket. After all of that, I seriously thought I would never date again and might end up alone. But 8 months later, I met my husband, and everything changed.